Oh, shoot. I just realized. Okay, so the idea here was I only need 6 of these, but since I'm still getting my casting legs, I wanted to put a couple extras in there just in case there was like a blowout or something didn't fill well for some reason. But since I'm using a centrifugal caster, this is going to be a heck of a lot of metal to try to sling all at once. I can't do this many at once. So I'm going to take this apart, and I have to do multiple flasks, because this just ain't going to work with my tools. Got to casting these. As you can see, I still have a big problem with bubbles. I really think this is because my vacuum that I'm trying to vacuum this stuff with is underpowered for what I'm trying to do. But anyway, that's what we're working with for now. And one thing that I thought was interesting is when I burned out the waxes, I did have a little bit of debris fall into one of these, and that's actually this one. Look at how necked down that ended up getting right there. And it's still, I mean, other than all these little bubbles, still generally filled out. That's kind of impressive, at least to me. It's like roughly half of the sprue was blocked. I had to get in there and clean it out and then tap out the debris. But it worked. Whew! These things. I mean, clearly there's a lot of work to do on them. It's a lot of sanding and filing left, but dang. Hefty! So glad I have this bit. It's so much easier to manage than playing this game inside the ring. Cleaning up all these patches and crap. These little nodes and sprue ends, whatever that's called. This one has the worst pocket? What would you call this? I forget the right terminology. Yeah, I'm gonna have to fill that. But I was really concerned that I wouldn't be able to mark these because I don't have a bent shank marking stamp, my little M. I do for 925, but not my little M. And it turns out I can just make it work by just coming in on a slight angle. It's a little close to the edge. I would have liked it to be a little further, but it's not terrible, right? I am definitely going to work to upgrade my vacuuming situation for casting, because getting these all nice and crispy, lots and lots of cleanup, and you can see there's still plenty more to do on the inside there. Alright, brushed it off, put this in place, because I did notice some dust is collecting up here, so at least we'll collect a little bit. And here we go, this one's still very much in the rough. So there's very little filing done to it. Definitely more rough than I'd like. But that speed. Whew. Okay, so I need to be really careful doing this surface. I've managed on this one. There's a little bit of a curve to it right there, but I can finish that. Get that out of there. Heat is definitely an issue, so I'm going to do one, part way and then switch to another. That's what I'm doing here. I had to set this aside, then went to this one. So it's pretty fast, but the seam in the belt is the real issue. It's just constantly hitting a bump, just So going at this with a really light touch on this seems to be the trick to helping avoid, you know, putting curves into this face that needs to be flat. You know, you don't want to like go too light because then you rock around. You don't want to go too hard because then you're probably going to tip it a little bit and grind away more than you want. Just got to find that moderate place. And then also when I'm hitting these tops, there we go, I'm inevitably going to be biased one way or another. So that's why I definitely want to do like this and then flip it, hit that side for so many seconds, and flip it, hit that side for so many seconds, doing what I'm doing there. Afraid of making one side skinnier than the other. Definitely don't want that. Here is one pre-filing. The flat face has been taken to... oh crap, what's this grit again? 220? 240. My bad. 240 grit. Same with the faces. So this here, inside, it's been taken to 240. Although I'm a little torn on leaving a little bit of the forged look in there. It's... I don't know. I probably will go in and just try to make it perfect this time. But yeah, so that's one pre-filing on these sides. You can see the texture there. And then these ones I've gone in and filed. Oop. Oh, I've got some little checkers right there I need to clean up. Right there. See those? I gotta clean those up. I missed those. Okay. I'm trying to avoid having any of that. A couple of these have a little bit of fire stain on them. I'm probably just going to torch all of them, put them in the pickle pot, and just go through some cycles, bring up the fine silver, and then go ahead and tumble them to kind of work hard in that surface layer, and then polish them up nice and bright after that. So for anyone familiar with doing like knife stuff, if you have a pattern welded billet and you've made your blade or whatever, and you're going to go put it in the etch, it only makes sense to bring it up to a certain grit before doing that, and then if you want to polish, you're going to have to do that after etching, because etching will, let's say you take it to like 1,000 or something, and you etch it, it's going to reduce the finish, and so it's that whole thing. Same thing with this. I'm not entirely sure that I want just the plain blocky look. I think I'd like a little more form to it, if that makes sense. And so if I introduce a small facet here, a small flat at each of these corners, you can still have the width of the band up here, but I think that would bring it a little more like the kind of form, the shape that a lot of signet rings take, where the flat portion that would either be engraved or have some sort of image on it is the largest part of the ring, just all the way around. And this would neck down and then either hit a consistent width or consistently taper all the way to the bottom of the ring shank. And I think introducing a little bit of a flat might be another little visual game to play, where you can kind of bring it closer to that look without actually thinning the band down. So I have separated out here the six better castings, fewer flaws in them, and then these two here have the worst flaws. So maybe I'll try that on one of these. Okay, it could certainly be more even, but it's not a disaster, so there's that. Yeah, I'm not going to do this on all 6 of these, there's no way. But it's a subtlety. Now I'm debating if I want to go in and texture that those bevels that I added. It could look okay, but this is good too. And going in and giving it that stippled surface, I'm thinking could help the slight unevenness. It would help hide it, I think, since I just kind of eyeballed this whole thing. Because it would be a lot of little crater hammer marks, which would make this a bit of a blurred line instead of a nice crisp straight line. And yeah, it would kind of hide that fact. So I think I'm going to do that. This is where a tool called a hammer hand piece would come in handy, where it translates the rotation of the flex shaft into a punching motion, but they're typically made for more expensive versions, where I have the budget version. It's not actually a flex shaft brand tool, and so the head size, or whatever the piece is called, when you pop this hand piece off, the connector, it's just barely the wrong size, if I recall my measurements correctly, and so I could get one, but it would do me no good, so we're going to go super low tech and just spend time on this. So what I'm doing is 1, breaking out the magnifiers, 2, taking this little pin tool, which I forget why I originally made it. Oh, that's right. No, I made this as a burnisher, so I would put this in the flex shaft tool. All right, chuck that up, and then it'll spin this real fast, and you can just drag it across surfaces and use it just like you would use this guy, except now it's very fast and it's motorized. Then there's another size here. This one has a sharper tip for getting into crevices. So it's, these are just the ends of old tools, old bits and things that are all worn out. And you can do that with them. So anyway, I'm taking this one. It's a little on the dull side. I want that because that's going to give me the crater shape that I want. This is going to be too sharp, too aggressive. So I have the ring here loaded up in the ball vise, and I'm just taking this tool and I'm getting very close up in here and just barely hovering over the surface. So right now I'm touching, now I'm just hovering over the surface and coming in with this very tiny hammer and just giving light taps, just letting the weight of the hammer touch down on my tool here and just quickly. And this is the surface we're getting. There we go. Oh, come on. And I'm just going to toe the line there to blur that edge. And that should help our look. Make it look a little better, a little more intentional. So that is that. It's not looking bad at all. And the reason why I brought this down instead of the original fade that I had, where it ended somewhere around, I don't know, call it 3/4, was there was a little ding on one side or another here, and I'm not going to get it out by filing down along this surface, so I had to just go ahead and drag the little chamfer all the way around, and then the fade doesn't make sense, so you just got to carry the stippling all the way around. It still looks good. I am totally fine with this. It looks good. I like it. I may have mentioned this before, so the whole reason behind making these, well, it's supposed to be 6, but I have 8 that I'm working on, just good to have spares. My cousin's getting married, and these are groomsmen gifts. It's not often that you're paid to make a ring for yourself, so, that part's cool. But anyway, one of these, I kind of talked with them and made a bit of a deal. One of these, I'm going to try to do something with Mokume on it. Either make a Mokume plate and then carve away and set it in on one of these rings, Um, do something like that. I'm still trying to figure out how it's going to work. So like I said, that may be a matter of marking a perimeter and then carving away material and dropping the plate in and then soldering it down. Or the reason why my mind is going there through all of that is I'm a little bit afraid of just popping out a plate, putting a wire border around it, and then soldering that whole thing down on top, because that's not going to blend as well. These shoulders, they swoop up. If you put something on top of it, now you just have this abrupt up, and you got to file away at it, and then there goes your border that you created, right? You're already just eating away at it at that point. I don't know. I probably just need to put a little more thought into it and be a little more careful about doing that, and that probably would work fine. But anyway, I'm only doing one of these. So whichever one of these is going to be his, if it's one of these, or, I mean, I can't imagine someone looking at this and saying, no, give me one of the other ones. So I guess this one's probably going to turn out to be his. It'll be the master signet, if you want to call it that. And then, you know, these for everybody else, including me. This one, I used the worst casting, the one that I had to do filling on. So right here you can see that dip in the metal right there. It's because I had to fill. There was a big pocket right there on the edge, and there's not a great way to fill on the edge. If it was deeper in, I could get it level, but so I filled it and filed it back as best as I could, but there's still a little bit of a dip there. Anyway, one of these is going to get that Mokume stuff. If this is destroyed in the process, then that will be sad and very unfortunate. Hopefully that doesn't happen. At least we have backups, but that's kind of the plan for one of these.
Little did he know there was a better way, an easier way. But Matthew only saw the hard way, and so Matthew did things the hard way, because that's what Matthew likes to do.
Okay, I'm liking where this is looking like it's going, as this is being sanded away, revealing some copper here along the edges. There's this little island that's appearing right here, and that seems pretty promising. So I like to see some copper around these edges because obviously it's a silver ring. So if I have some copper here on the edges, you have some definition to this rectangular shape, and that's going to help how everything looks. And then, yeah, it'll help it stand out as a rectangle in the surface of this. Whereas, obviously, if this was mostly silver around the edges, you go and you solder this in, however you fasten it in there, it's just going to be like, it's kind of meh, right? You're not going to be able to really tell so much what's going on there. I still wasn't quite liking what I was seeing, so I sanded down through a couple more layers. The silver is revealing now through this copper layer. And I'm now proceeding, well, a little bit on 400, then taking it down to 600? 600. Just to be very, very careful. 400, I'm eating through the layers fairly quickly. 600, it's super, super slow. So it's like a few strokes on this one, and then bring it off, take it down to a nicer shine with this, see where I'm at, see how it's moving. Hopefully this is where we can stop, because I really don't want to make this any thinner than I have to. Well, honestly, it only really does need to be a veneer. It doesn't make sense to make it thicker than it needs to be. So it's just finding that sweet balance between all those things, the tension. Okay, it just is not turning out to be dynamic enough. There's not enough going on in this pattern. It's kind of always, you get little tiny islands and things that appear in like the copper. There might be a little island of silver like I was pointing out, but it doesn't persist long enough for the rest of the pattern to kind of develop. It just keeps turning into stuff like this. So this little piece is not going to work. So what I think I'll do, I think I'll split off a little bit of this billet from over here. And I'll hammer it out, and I'll give it a twist, and I'll flatten it out some more into some sheet similar to this. And hopefully between the hand hammering and the twisting, we're going to get something real good. Oh, the fun just never ends. Lesson learned. If ever doing anything on here, always have some sort of catching contraption behind it. The plate came unglued from my block. I saw it up to the guard, heard the ting, and you can't get low enough to see light through it. There you go. I thought maybe it flew into this guard here and got lost somewhere down in the machine. I've taken it apart. It's not in there. It's somewhere floating around. I only heard it hit the metal. I didn't hear it land. So it is lost somewhere in the Twilight Zone. That's a lot of fun. Could be anywhere. Anywhere. Son of a gun. Okay, we have some options here. So there's our ring. You've seen it many times. Here's my first chip that I initially took off of there before thinking to myself, wait, why don't I just sand down the hole? I just reworked that a little bit, and there's an okay pattern in there. It's a little hard for me to get a good angle on this. Give it a few minutes and let that copper oxidize and brown up just a touch, and it'll be a little easier. But you can see we got a little splotch there in the corner. We have this interesting swoopy line collection going on there. Looking at this, you can kind of imagine it. Nope, it's all reflecting. Gosh, there we go. So that could look pretty good. That would be pretty interesting. But is it the best? I don't know. And so what I've done is, have my calipers set to, what dimension is it? I think it's the height, I guess you'd call it, from this perspective, the height of what this plate needs to be. So I can just hold it up here and frame areas, and I can see, okay, this is what the plate would look like if I were to cut on these lines. So like that right there, that could look pretty interesting, with that little bit of copper emerging right there. Right up here, I've got to stay down below this line, because that's where my, this no longer meets the dimensions I need, so I need to stay below right there. So that little bit is out of the question. Sadly, that would be pretty interesting too. Get a little bit of that and a little bit of the twist. I have some choices to make. At least I can frame areas and get an idea what it's going to look like on the ring. But you know, the more I look at this one, the more it does grow on me. You got a little bit of the twist, you got a little bit of random right here in the corner. And it's not just the corner, you can see just beyond, it's like right there by my nail, that little pinkish stripe running up and down. It's really hard to see, but like that's certainly a little bit of something interesting happening there. And if I don't sand this much further, I just sand it a little bit more, that might pop out a little more and kind of complete this, where there's just a good level of activity. It would be ideal to have a little black line running around it. I would like that definition. So I might try to do this in such a way that I don't solder it in, and maybe I do just set it in as if what's it called? Let's just do like an inlay. So that would mean excavating this material and doing a small undercut, bowing this a little bit, and then hammering it down and in so that way it presses into those undercuts. Or maybe this is a good opportunity to try something else. Maybe I do solder it in, but go in and excavate a small channel, and then take a little bit of my sulfur over here, take some silver dust, and try to make some yellow and do like a yellow inlay, because that's some interesting stuff, and that would be pretty cool and a good way to get that little black line. So that's an option too. Something I haven't done before that I'd like to try. Why not? Okay, this has sat overnight, and you can see how much easier it is to see what's going on here with the pattern. So like I said, we've got some stuff happening here at the corners. This meets up to a corner. A little bit going on down here. Not so much at this bottom corner, but there are lines nearby. And then you can see that stripe that I was talking about. I'm going to continue to sand this just a little bit more, try to expose just a little bit more copper. I'm going to go very light on the sanding. But I might use this one. I kind of like it. Okay, so I am still not sure that this is going to... It's going to be a heck of a friction fit if it's not a proper inlay. But do I want to rely on that? So, like I said, this is domed. There you go, you can kind of see the curve in it. It goes both ways. And that means when I flatten this out, it's going to expand. So I'm not worried about that fit. That's going to be hecka tight. What we're looking at now is, how do I know that this depth in the middle is deep enough? Because if I go to flatten this, and this doesn't have the proper amount of space to drop down and flatten back out from me punching on the top, then we're going to have a bit of an issue. It's just going to be domed, and we have to do a lot more sanding than I really want to do. That's where this guy comes in. So go ahead and measure in the middle. And we're looking at 0.82 millimeters. Let's lock that down so it doesn't move. And now, I can insert this into the jaws, and actually we have a little bit of space. It's kind of a loose fit, which means we do have enough room for this to be smushed back down, and actually you want just a tiny bit extra, because take pretty much any piece of metal and bend it where you want it to go to, and then you let go, it's always going to spring back a little bit, so you want to overbend it just a little bit. Hopefully that little bit is going to be enough. What I am not sure about is, should I tin the back of this and then go ahead and solder it in anyway, or should I just rely on this friction fit? That is my big debate in my head right now. These cuts all were made with a ball burr, and you can even see it. Let me get a pointer. But this, even just this wall in general, is going to be that ball shape to it, so it's going to be scooped out. I don't know. Okay, I forgot I needed this to actually be a pinky ring and not a ring finger ring. So I resized it, and actually I am liking this so much more. This is so much nicer as a pinky ring, actually. It's super solid feeling. I liked it before, but now I'm just like, dang, I really like it. Obviously I'm going to have to rework some of this going on right here, but that's fine. That's not too bad. I am at this point still mostly concerned with how that little plate is going to connect in there. If it comes to it, I think I can put this all under the torch and do some very, very careful soldering, and it might come to that. Wow, okay, so here you go. A lesson in the importance of your order of operations. So this was a very tight fit before, but look at this now. Visible gaps. No bueno. Pops out so much easier. And you know why that is? That's all from me taking a chunk out of the middle of the shank of the ring and then bending those ends in. You look at this and you see all this material, you think, oh, it's pretty beefy, it's going to bend somewhere further down, most likely, you know, it's not going to be too bad up here. No, look at this. Visible gaps. And that's not a super tight fit anymore. So that leaves us with only one choice moving forward, and that is to solder this thing in there. So here we go. Well, tomorrow. I'm going to call it a little bit early today. 1 a.m. instead of 2. Now, things that I can do actually that should be able to help this is I can come in here with a planishing hammer and I can strike this surface and that'll move those walls in. So I can do a little bit of tweaking and help it out so that way those gaps aren't so bad, but I'm not going to be able to do that to the point where it's going to be where it was before. So if the damage is done, I'm going to have to solder this thing in here, but I can kind of help it along a little bit. Okay, so I have taken this under the torch. We have done the soldering. You can see it's all blobby. And one thing I'm concerned about, but I think I've taken care of this concern by doing this the way that I did it. You really don't want to apply heat from the top. Solder flows where the heat is, so if you want it to flow down, you want to apply heat down inside here. Because this was a previously domed piece of metal, and I'm dropping it on a rough surface, right? I did all the excavation down in there, but it's not perfectly even. There are going to be grooves and all sorts of things going on down there. There are going to be air gaps, is my point, between this plate and that material down there. And so the last thing you want to do is trap air or water or something down inside that. So what I tried to do is when I began soldering, I tried to do as much as I could in the first pass. It did take a couple passes, and ideally you would do it only in one pass. That way there's no chance of vinegar or something getting down in there and eating away at this over time and causing it to bubble and expand and corrode and all sorts of nasty, ugly things. Nothing funky like that going on. But that is what I did. I applied this, and yeah, I melted it on the top at first, but then I flipped it, and I applied heat down inside here to draw the solder down and under as much as possible. I have no way to guarantee that I did that perfectly, and that's the scary part about this. But as I file away, if there are no little bubbles or gaps that could indicate trapped air, then I have good reason to believe that I have done a good enough job in drawing metal down between these two pieces and properly filled the gaps. I'm probably going to lose a bit of this pattern. It's going to change as I level this back out, but hopefully I can keep it from changing too much. Okay, well, now we're at this fun part. I get to do this stuff over again. So I need to, well, redo down here since I had to cut and flow solder and reconnect these pieces earlier. So I had to re-facet that to give myself my lines to work within, as you can see there. But I'm kind of debating if it would make sense to go over all of this again, because now that it's been under the torch, everything has been softened again, and it's the sort of detail that you don't want to polish away really, really quickly, and so work hardening a little bit would be a good idea. So yeah, I might just go over the whole surface lightly, just to give it a little bit of that. I do need to finish this size a little bit more. You can see the little nick in it right there. But I wanted to show, see this? Fire stain. I was afraid that would happen, just because of the amount of time I spent with this under the torch. So what I'm going to have to do is reheat this and carefully bring up the fine silver and then polish. And that's going to require me to heat and quench this, well, heat and pickle it several times, which is concerning because it's going to etch away this copper. And I don't want that to happen too quickly. Okay. I'm trying to be very gentle here with my heat. I just want to heat this up until things start to discolor and darken. And then pick this up and drop it in the pickle pot. I don't want it to be too hot because what has happened previously is that can potentially blow layers apart with the Mokume. And I don't want to do that. I just want to get this hot enough to start to oxidize that copper. So we're almost there right now. And then we're going to give it a dunk. Okay. It's much easier with two hands. And then it'll kind of explode a little bit. And right as there's that more violent boiling, all the darkness blasts off the silver and you're left with it bright again. But we need to get to a point where we don't see this fire stain anymore. You can still see it, little shadows. It's going to take several heats and quenches. I'm very nervous about the Mokume.
We're no